as your lawyer, this is a terrible idea.
I don't ask Dana shit anymore because Dana got wind we were going to shoot Tyler with an arrow. And Dana's like, do not fucking shoot Tyler with an arrow. And I said, he's going to sign a release form. He says, it doesn't matter. So we just don't.
I probably said something like, I have to say to you that this is a terrible idea and I think you shouldn't do it. Let me know how it goes.
From the stories I hear, I think there was just like a don't do anything with Tyler because whatever you guys want to do is probably a bad idea.
Well, y'all were like lathering it up with butter and chasing him around with paintball guns and...
Yeah, what's wrong with that? Those were his ideas.
Yeah. I wonder how the butthole tattoo guy is working out.
I don't know, but the tattoo goes halfway up his back. So I heard he was at a hospital, and the nurse is like, "What is this a tattoo of?"
Why did you get this?
I guess that's a way to pick up some nurses.
I bought him a car. Like he was paid.
The tattoo is forever.
Right? Yeah, of course it should be.
Yeah. I just remember Derek gagging the whole time.
Because he's a fucking baby. Derek's a baby.
That was awesome. Are we recording?
Yeah. What are we talking about?
So what do you think, Dana? Coming from like the tactical response community, like the people of it, do you think that this has a place with those people? Because we do have a lot of crossover.
Yeah, I think
I
think it's a natural fit, right? Like, I mean, a lot of the people that are here learning about a lot of the things that are being shown and demonstrated here, they may have a piece of the puzzle missing. As part of what I said this morning, it's like, you know, how many goats do you have? Okay, how many are you going to have when I get done? If you can't keep me from taking your goats, then they're my goats, for example.
More importantly, how many females do you have in your house? Because that's really going to be the commodity. Those are not going to be your women anymore.
That's right. I picked goats, but you know that's true.
But and that's the thing. I think that the community now and the crossover with TAC response. I think the TAC, like we used to, all of James's and my clients were all the same people.
Yeah, when I got here, it was almost you almost had to like look carefully to see any separation.
Yeah.
Every single thing you made, at least one of single thing you made was on a hook in the shop when you went to your first tactical response class. Right. It was like walking into, you know.
So we started doing a lot of outside industry stuff. How do we sell the same product, similar product to guys with trucks? And how do we get new blood into the community? So that's when we started doing the overland stuff and different things. Mm-hmm. And every dude with a Jeep has a gun and he needs training, so we can expose them to tactical response. But a lot in the prepper community, and most of it's not these people here, right? It's the online prepper community. It's always, I don't need any training because so-and-so taught me. Well, and then you see like so-and-so and you're like, well, that's a fucking goober. like just because some dipshit took you out and fucking got you to pull a trigger on some shit, like you don't have any formal training. You're both highly fucking dangerous.
And even if you had some training at some point, it's perishable, and you can never practice enough, and you never know who knows something that you can add that's really valuable. Like almost every trainer I've ever been to, and I've been to a bunch of different name brand trainers, almost every one of them in some form or fashion at some point during the class says something like this: hey, this is how I'm teaching you to do it. If you will, please do it the way I'm teaching you to do it while you're here. And then when you leave, whatever works, keep it. And if it doesn't work for you, let it go.
And other people, just like, we could all have an exact same script, 5 of us, and the student is going to like one person and hear and be able to listen to them. And they've already, like, when one person starts talking, there's dudes come talk to me and I've already turned them off. Just like, you just can't, it's just not there, right? Mm-hmm. So, and people learn differently, and everybody's going to instruct something differently. So I know you're not going to believe this, but there are people in the tactical gear industry that they might not like me. Like, they might not buy my stuff. I mean, I can't fathom that, but they're still buying gear from somewhere.
Yeah.
That kind of goes along with I don't need training, because I know people who, you know, they were trained by the military in the 70s, and they
You
don't
hear that
think
all the
that
time.
they don't think that they need training, and they're also the ones buying their holsters off of Amazon and that kind of stuff.
Well,
So,
way worse than that is police officers, because
Mm.
like police officers don't train. And I've just seen this over the years from the community, and then just spending so much time with James. But that's always the thing: is cops don't train.
The best cure for the only police should have guns idea is spend a weekend with cops with guns.
Yeah, put them in. That was the biggest eye opener for me. Right, I think we were in Indiana. James, a bunch of TAC guys. Rob Pincus was there. We were there for the television show, and Rob put some people in vehicles. And holy shit! Like I never thought like draw the pistol, but to present it. How do you get it past you without flagging yourself? Right?
Yeah.
That never even crossed my mind working inside an enclosed area like that in a vehicle. So, I mean, that was an eye-opener in itself. But, like, you just don't know what you don't know. And most people, what they know is some shit that they thought they saw on television.
Yeah. That was actually how I got my wife to finally pull the trigger. She was thinking about it, and she was like, well, what do they teach you there? And I was saying, for instance, if you end up on your back, how are you going to safely pull that pistol? And I kind of walked her through it. I didn't want to show her too much because I wanted them to do it. And she instantly was like, I never even considered that. I figured if I was on my back, I would just pull it out. And I'm like, you pull it out, shoot yourself in the foot. You know?
Yeah, there's so many times that like something, I've trained with a lot of the name brand people, and like every single class, it's like that's the thing. That's the thing that makes my toolkit better. I know the minute it happens, I'm like, that's the thing. There's a lot good here, but that's the thing that I'm going to be sure. So like ECQC with Craig Douglas in May, just something simple that's like, I can't believe I never thought of that. I can't believe no one ever showed me that. But it's like, there it is. That's the thing.
That's the, like...
You're going to get fucked up in that class. You're
Yeah,
going to come home
that's-
so fucked up.
Yeah.
You're fighting. And
So
Joey.
you said when you got your wife to finally fire a pistol the first time, was it harder to get her to fire a pistol or the first time she let you take her out?
It was easier to get her to go out with me. And it was one of the first.
I know that was hard.
It was one of our first kind of dates. Like we were hanging out for like weeks and weeks and weeks. I was like, let's go over here, and I put her with a Glock 17, and she was limp wristing it. So every single time she pulled the trigger, it jammed, and I didn't want to. I just wanted, like, she was completely holding it wrong. And at that time, I didn't have any formal training either, but I knew a little bit. I didn't want to be that guy, like, here, sweetheart, let me show you what to do.
Was this like your first date you took her to a range?
This was probably a month into the relationship. And so I just let her keep doing it, hold it the way she wants to, thumbs crossed behind the pistol and all that stuff, like, completely wrong.
It's a
But
self-correcting error.
I wanted her to have fun. But she didn't have fun because every time she pulled the trigger, it jammed. That was the last time I saw her shoot.
Did she have your pro on?
Yeah, we went to a
It's always that. Here, baby.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a desk pop? Did you ever ND in the bedroom?
Nope.
No, never. You don't have a hole somewhere in your roof?
Nope.
Two things happened today that were pretty cool, and they both involved women that were here, both of whom came to the table after my presentation. And one of them said, I want to take a class, but I don't know how to get my husband to let me or say yes or make the money available to me or whatever. And I said, well, tell me a little bit about that. And she was like, well, he thinks he can train me. I said, I said, do you have kids? She said, yeah. I said, are they old enough to drive? She said, yeah. I said, who's teaching them to drive? She said, me. I said, how's that going? She goes, it's fucking terrible. I'm like, exactly. Why? Because you have a whole history of baggage that comes to the moment, and then you still got to have dinner together. In the case of your husband trying to teach you to shoot, he still wants to have sex later. And so if you're annoyed with him because of the way that the attempt to instruct you went, well, he's just cock-blocked himself. She said, I bet that'll work. I'm like, yeah, that'll definitely work. $600, we teach you to shoot. He wants you to know how to shoot. You get a weekend of good training, and he's not cock-blocked himself. She was like, I think that'll work. I'm like, yeah.
You just have to train your women to compartmentalize things.
And then the other one lady came up and she was talking about, well, what kind of gun, whatever. And I said, well, honestly, I had the Glock 17 red gun, and I said, honestly, if you're new to handguns or whatever, I would want to have you learn on something like this. And she said, oh, I have trouble with my hands, I can't. And I go, no, we're going to fix that right now. Mm-hmm. So I handed it to her, and she was like, yeah, and I go, no, listen, here's what I want you to do. So I gave her a little, like 2 minutes of like
push and pull.
Yeah, right. And next thing you know, she does it, and she looks amazed, and she goes, oh my God. And I was like, yeah, you never had the problem you thought you had. What
She's
you had,
3 inches taller now.
Yeah, what you had was no one had ever showed you the technique. She's like, you're right. And I was like, so it turns out this whole time, you could have. You just, no one had ever.
And really, if you got to the root of it, there's probably some dude told her that.
Oh my God. So
like I would have asked, like, well, what pistol do you think you need?
Right. So, well, I'd already gotten from her, I think she told me that there were several that told me either their boyfriend got them a 380 or their husband got them a J-frame. Yeah. Or they went to the gun store and the guy told her that...
And it's a 357 and it's plus P plus.
And I was like, oh my God, right? So I was like, those are very difficult guns to learn to shoot, and they're not even that fun to shoot.
Shit, they don't even come with sights somewhere.
Right. I mean, it's like, I was like, you're a novice shooter. I would want you to have every advantage possible to learn to shoot, because 90% of what learning to shoot is about is transferable from gun to gun. Why would we handicap you? And I said, like, if I wanted you to learn to ride a bicycle, I wouldn't put you on a unicycle. And so when somebody hands a woman who's never shot a J-frame or a little tiny micro gun, I'm like, they want to teach you to learn to ride a bicycle, and they gave you a fucking unicycle. Well, why? Did you enjoy learning? She was like, no, I hated the, like, she's like, I make myself, this one was really, another third lady, she was really committed to learning to shoot. But some guy in a gun store somewhere had convinced her to buy a shotgun and a J-frame. And I was like,
and told her to drag the body inside.
I was like, oh my God.
Okay, so drag the body inside. Do you recommend that your customers drag the body inside after they shoot someone on the porch?
Absolutely not. Never.
I don't know if we actually said this on camera yet, but you're a criminal defense lawyer.
I'm a criminal.
An actual licensed one.
I'm a criminal.
Okay, so
lawyer.
Knowing that, do you drag the body inside?
You fucking do not move, or you do not tamper with the evidence. No, you do not. That is.
What if you put him in carpet first?
It's like, no, don't put a screwdriver in their hand. Don't do any of that dumb shit that people.
Well, the police officer told me. I'll bet there are police officers telling people that.
I guess
How many police officers are the ones that win the case in court?
Well, a lot of people get convicted because they did do it.
Yeah. Well, what I mean is,
but when the case falls apart, it's generally because some police officer's testimony turned out to be problematic.
Well, they're all, clearly you did something wrong, or they wouldn't have arrested you.
Oh yeah, of course.
Well, that's not. But
right,
if you, what would you, if you could give a client, or if you could give a future client one piece of advice, what would that be?
One will rarely regret having said too little, and I have never been happy I was given a discovery from the state that included a statement from my client.
After the fact.
Right. Like, here's the DVD with your client's hour-and-a-half long interview. Fuck! Nothing. Like, people, and here's what happens. People walk around thinking they're a good person, that maybe on a bad day made a mistake, but they're a good person, or they genuinely don't believe they did anything wrong, and they certainly want to explain, right? That's a natural human instinct, is I'm a good person. I want to tell you how good a person I am, and I want you to come to understand that what happened here had to happen, or I did the right thing. So there's this compulsion to articulate, to the referee, if you will, the detective, how your narrative is actually proof that you're a good person who doesn't deserve to be charged with a crime. The problem is you're talking to a professional investigator who actually, it's harder for them to write a report that says to the district attorney, no crime, than it is for them to write to the report to the district attorney that says, I think we can convict him of this.
Yeah, you're speaking to the other team.
Yeah, you are literally not talking to someone whose job it is to help you. You are talking to someone whose job it is to close the file. The safest, easiest way for a detective to close the file is to pass it on to the district attorney with a recommendation to indict.
That's what my federal lawyer, when I didn't know I needed a federal lawyer, first I hire like a murder lawyer.
Right.
He's like, if you'd have killed somebody, we'd get you home, no problem.
Right, no problem.
But you need this other lawyer. And
Yeah.
he had said, he goes, we might take this to trial. You might even get off on this. He goes, but they had you on CNN for 3. Like, they're not going to come out and go, oh yeah, we
Right,
fucked
exactly.
up.
That's
He's
the
like,
thing.
they might not even have you on what they say they
Right.
have you, but they're going to have you on
Yeah,
something.
I've lost count of the number of times that someone says, well, that's not what happened. I'm like, okay, I'm not saying that you're wrong or that you're lying or anything. I'm just telling you that a guy with a badge and a gun has already signed an affidavit that says you did it. He's not changing that story now. Like,
Is it so? If I get a speeding ticket, should I always protest it or should I pay it?
generally speaking, I would say if your driving history is not bad, go to court. Typically in traffic court, for people that haven't got a bad record, the judge is going to say, well, how about you do this 4-hour class or this 8-hour class or whatever. And if they end up making you pay the ticket, well, that's what was going to happen anyway.
So is it typically bullshit or not the case any longer that if I go to court and the officer doesn't show up, they just dismiss the case?
If you show up 2 or 3 times, but a lot of times
2 or 3 times.
well, at a minimum probably, because the state's going to get a continuance if the officer's in service or whatever. They're going to get a continuance. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Maybe the law degree I got from Vanderbilt and the 30 years I've spent at the courthouse are just as good as your Google law degree, but maybe not.
Come on,
so,
man. I have a lot of dudes on TikTok I watch.
I bet.
I send them to you, and you're like,
That's right.
sovereign citizen.
Yeah,
Bullshit.
sovereign.
That was the thing,
Exactly.
we don't get tickets because we're traveling. We're
That's
not
right.
traveling.
I'm conducting myself.
Have you seen? And God, I actually dig through these to try to find the proof. But have you seen all these videos that are around that, like, because your social security number, there's a number right by your social. And I haven't even looked to see if the number's there. But that's how much you're worth, and that's the contract with the state. So if you take your social security number to a bank, they have to give you a loan against your social security number. And they're like, I got $1 million. I'm like, it doesn't look like you have $5, much less $1 million.
If that's true, then that would be news to me. But I guess stranger things have happened. The problem, I assume doctors have the same problem, and that is that the internet ruined what we do, because it made everyone an instant subject matter expert. Like literally, like I have people come to me and they're like, "But I looked it up," and I'm like, "Okay."
They get combative.
Yeah.
Is it true when the officer rolls up and he's like, son, you were doing 55 and a 54, and you're like, you have to show me the radar gun. Do they have to show you the radar gun? You have to have a certificate when it was calibrated. Is that true?
Those are all great things to bring up at the courthouse later. On the side of the road, it's probably not your best move.
So on the side of the road, DUI. Is it better to request a blood test even if you haven't been drinking
Well,
at all?
where I live, you're gonna get a blood test whether you like it or not.
Okay.
Well, okay, so where I live, I haven't seen a breathalyzer
Where I
test.
come from.
Yeah, I haven't seen a breathalyzer test in years. If they're serious about arresting you, they're taking you to the hospital, and if you make them, they'll go get a warrant to get your blood drawn, and they will literally strap you down and get your blood. So, what I would say is let's say it's a DUI stop. If there's any chance at all that you are impaired, then politely decline to take any tests, including the blood test, because the possibility exists that they will fuck up the warrant or that some systemic problem will surface that will get those results kicked out later. But if you do that, do it politely, do it respectfully, and understand that they're going to come at you with, well, we're going to suspend your license. Yes, I understand. That's true. But keep in mind that if you're ever asked to do field sobriety tests, they have already in their mind articulated the probable cause to get to that. So the warrant is already going to say bloodshot, watery eyes, slurred speech, smell of alcoholic beverage about their person, unsteady on their feet, all this.
They just copy paste it.
Yeah, they just copy paste. I think they prepare like 5 before they go on shift, and they just fill in your name later. So all that shit's already in their mind. That's already done. Now we're at field sobriety test. Well, how does that look? So the field sobriety test, they're going to take you to the dash cam in front of their car, and they're going to produce, narrate, and direct the evidence against you. So the officer who has been to school, who knows exactly, how to narrate, direct, and produce this thing, is using you. You don't know the rules. You don't know, you don't know why you're being asked to do what you're doing. And meanwhile, they're over there, like, a lot of them will, like, be asking you to do this, and then the next thing you know, the video starts showing a flashlight flickering, right? Well, they're counting off the cues that they're observing of your mistakes, right? So, like, and they don't all do that, but that's not uncommon. So, and then we're going to move to the breath, or to the blood test in where I live. And they're going to draw your blood, and they're going to go get a warrant. Now, occasionally you get lucky because somebody fucks up. Somebody either creates a shortcut or makes a mistake on a warrant, and later we can get, some leverage. But, I would say, generally speaking, if there's any, first of all, you can get an Uber from where we are right now to Knoxville and back for less than you can just go in, plead guilty, and pay the DUI.
How do you know that?
How do I know that?
Well, I mean,
I don't, because I know it.
Why'd you choose Knoxville?
Because it doesn't fucking matter how much the Uber is.
Okay, I got you.
If you get a DUI conviction in Tennessee, you are going to have an interlock device installed in your car for at least a year. That's going to be $400 to install and $50 a month to monitor. You're going to be on probation for at least a year. You're going to be required to buy SR22 insurance for several years, maybe 5 or 7. You always
fuck me up with the logic. Do not use logic.
Right. So I don't know how much an Uber is. It doesn't matter. I don't need to know.
I thought maybe you had taken that Uber ride.
That's before you pay me, right? So just walking in and saying, okay, fine, I did it. Never mind the 2 days in jail or more.
So I've got one for you that you might like. I got 2 of them actually. So I think it was, I don't know why I was watching Cops or something equivalent.
Oh, love it.
So they pull this carload of outstanding citizens over.
Oh, right.
And immediately the back door opens and Jim goes running off, and he's like, I pulled you over for speeding. Tell Jim he doesn't have any warrants. Jim, you don't have any warrants. So they knew him so well.
They're familiar.
So a police officer actually stood in the shop in Oceanside and told this, and he's like, so if you had a beer, you're going home, you get in a fender bender, accident, whatever, pull your car over, lock your keys in the car immediately, go to the liquor store down the corner, buy a beer, sit down, and just wait for them to show up. When they breathalyze you, no, I was not drinking. I had an accident, locked my damn keys in the car.
I was frustrated.
I was frustrated. I had to go get some beers and just found them out.
I mean,
nowadays with cameras and shit.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? Like you should just assume that everything you've done from the time you left your home until you got home, somewhere, somehow, can be stitched together with surveillance cameras. Never mind your own phone. Never mind all this other shit, right? So, man, the days we're living in now, it's just
geofencing.
Yeah, I mean, you're just gonna. And there's just too much surveillance and technology. Like in the old days, man, if you wanted to prove that your wife was cheating on you, or if the cop wanted to prove that you were driving drunk, they had to get on the stand and convince people that their story was credible. Like you needed a PI or a confession or all this shit. Now it's like, I don't need a PI to prove your wife's cheating on you. I'll just subpoena her credit card records, her phone records,
hotel rooms.
I'll just issue 14 subpoenas. It'll be obvious, right?
I was gonna say it's even clearer than that. You just find her other Instagram page.
Right, just get a hold of the phone.
Chicks have multiple
I'm
Instagram pages.
assuming if they're cheating,
I mean, the phone, the computer, all that shit. And in the case of police officers, man, every cop in Williamson County is wearing a body cam and a dash cam.
I think everywhere now.
I mean, the only places that aren't just can't afford it yet.
I mean, even Camden, we have it.
It turns out, I was on city council for 24 years in Franklin, and I was insistent early on that we put body cams on all the police officers. Initially, the chief didn't want to do it. And I said, Chief, first, she was like, well, and I said, she had some reluctance about cameras. I go, we got cameras in every dash. We're way past the cameras. And then there were other, but I said, look, the goal, in a perfect world, it'll clear good cops from wrongful allegations. And it'll keep bad cops better. And eventually, it'll actually convict someone that otherwise wouldn't have been convicted. Like, why would we not do this? So now it's commonplace. I mean,
What's your favorite kind of? Would you rather have a super easy case, or would you rather have a super hard case? Because I assume compensation is going to come with.
man, you know, when I was a young lawyer, I had the privilege of working for a really, really, really fine old school trial lawyer, and he said something that I truly believe, and that is that like there is no higher calling in the legal profession than to stand next to the defendant and say not guilty and ready for trial. Now,
That's why you named it that. That's the podcast name.
Yep, ready for trial. And so the issue is this: like, I can represent people who are guilty all day long and do well and make a living and improve their outcomes, you know, generally. But honestly, the stakes in those cases are not that high. They did it. We're just looking for the best possible mitigated outcome. And many of them, you know, they knew they were doing it. Like, you know, when you sit next to someone who genuinely didn't do it, whose entire life could come crashing down around them, and the stakes are an innocent man has been placed opposite the power of the state. Man, I love doing that, but man, the hardest things I've ever done were get ready for and try cases where the defendant, my client, was either totally innocent or had been egregiously overcharged. You know, like, and that's a lot of what criminal defense law is. Like, you know, I've represented people who were charged with straight up first degree homicide, and even I look at the case and go, this is a manslaughter, right? Like in reality, when you really look at the facts, but the state is trying to put him in prison for, you know, first degree homicide.
Do you think that that's happening more frequently now?
It depends. I mean, you know, good lawyers. The problem is that the news cycle and the availability of news places the entire system under scrutiny, and that's not, generally speaking, I would say sunshine is a good disinfectant, and I don't mind people paying attention to what we're doing. But I always know that when I go to the courthouse and Channel 4 is out front, that everything's going to be different in the building that day. Because it's not that anybody's doing their job better or honestly, finally, because the news is there. It's that, like, the things that we do day in and day out suddenly, like, get jammed up, right? Like, and I mean, to some extent that sounds maybe a little shady or whatever. It's not. It's just that, like, it's like everybody behaves better in church, right? You know, like, it's not because you're better. It's because you're being scrutinized by people, you know, right, and held to an artificially different standard only while they're looking at you. So defending, I wouldn't do this job if I couldn't try cases, hard cases. I joke with people all the time that, like, I let bad lawyers take easy cases.
Have you ever had a client and you're like, this guy is completely innocent, and you come to find out he wasn't?
Occasionally, I'm pretty thorough in vetting the client, and most people understand. Like, when you go to the doctor, you sort of intuitively understand. You need to tell that doctor even the embarrassing shit, right? Like, you know, like,
I don't know how this got in my butthole,
right? Or like when they ask you, like, have you taken any illegal narcotics in the past 3 days? Because if you have, we can't give you. Yeah, you're gonna die as soon as we give you this medicine we otherwise would give you. You tend to get honest, right? And I tell people, and the lawyers say to me, they're like, "Oh, I never ask." I'm like, I think that's dumb, because the only reason a lawyer wouldn't just directly demand to know from their client, did you do it, did you not, what happened, is that a lawyer ethically cannot allow perjured testimony. I can't knowingly let someone, a witness or whatever, get up there and lie and offer it. Okay. Now there's some ways that I can let a client tell their story, even if I think it's a lie, or even if I know it's a lie, without violating the rules. But that's really the only reason that I would even ever try to not know. My view is, I don't want to be the only motherfucker in the room that doesn't know what happened. Like, the fucking cop knows, the victim knows, the DA over there knows, you know.
I thought those were my kids.
I don't want to be the only person sitting there that's like, oh, shit, okay.
So how about the flip-flop of that? Have you ever had a dude you're like, this motherfucker definitely did this shit? And
Oh, sure. Like, I've had people tell me stories that I found hard to believe. And it came out, like, I remember one, I don't remember all the details, but this lady told me this story, and I was just like, this is crazy. Like, there's no way all these things happened, that if any one of them didn't happen like that, your claim of innocence is gone. Like, sure enough, I was very skeptical. I was like, you should take a plea. She was like, I'm not pleading. And I was like, and finally, it's like, all this shit fell into place, and I was like, I'll be damned. Now, more often, it's the overcharged, you know, the client is actually guilty of a thing, but the DA has stacked up all these all these charges that are overdone or, you know, or inapplicable and all that. That's, you know, that's.
do you just point that out to them? Hey, you can't do this.
You know, yes, and most of the time, most of the people that do this for a living, you know, they understand that, like, most people that come to it believe in a system, and we understand that, like, the system that we have invested our lives in only works if everybody does their job, you know, reasonably well and ethically and appropriately. Every once in a while, you get someone who's been blinded by ambition, or you get what I call the true believer, right? Like the career prosecutor who could have just as easily been like a city planner or, you know, an architect or something like that. That doesn't have like a personal vendetta to right every wrong in the universe. Those people generally can sort wheat from chaff pretty efficiently and reasonably. Every once in a while, you get a career prosecutor that falls in the category of what I call a true believer, and they don't view, like, they think there's no such thing as a bad conviction. Like, any conviction is always a good thing, and it's like, no. Sometimes even the person that actually did something wrong, the world isn't better, the victim isn't better, the defendant isn't better. Nothing is better just because you convicted them of something that you could have. Like, actually pump the brakes. Like, you know, like sometimes sometimes people do things that are bad and criminal, but what you're really talking about now is like taking away this child's only opportunity for a future by placing a parent in prison for, you know, a long time. And sometimes people should go to prison for a long time, but man, the true believers are the problem, or the ones that become like the biggest problem is probably the people that take it personally. If you do what I do and you take shit personally, your judgment gets clouded, and then you become, you know, like then you lose your sense of proportion and justice, and then you got a problem. That's where it goes bad.
Have you ever had, or do you know of a case that involved a UFO?
No.
No?
No.
Man, I really thought you were going to have something for that one.
No, it turns out that all UFO claims that I've personally handled have turned out to be delusions.
But you have handled.
I was going to say, let's roll back the claims that you have handled. So you have.
I mean, listen, bona fide paranoid schizophrenia is not uncommon in my world, right? Like, I woke up the other day in the middle of the night, and I seldom do that. Like, there's wake up to pee. That's not what happened. This was like brain turned on. It was like, hey, you need to think about something, and you got to start by figuring out what it is you got to think about. And I was laying there. I was like, this is weird, because I normally fall asleep immediately, sleep through the night, wake up, I'm fine. And I'm laying there going, what the fuck is it I'm supposed to realize I'm supposed to think about? And then I was like, oh, right. I need to remember and remind myself that I spent all week with cocaine addicts and rapists. And that's not normal. Like, I can't lose sight of the fact that most people, if somebody I just met was asking me, you know, the get to know you questions, like over dinner, hey, your wife knows my wife, and now we're at dinner together, and you say to me, what do you do? And I go, oh, well, today I was in court. I cross-examined the victim of a rape, and then I did an arraignment for a cocaine addict, and they're going to look at me like, oh shit. So do you like any sports? Because right, that's fucked up. And I had to remind myself that like I had literally spent all week with people who have crushing cocaine habits and different people who were in fact rapists, and that's not a normal experience for people, and I needed to be reminded of that.
Do you think? Can you recall a time in court where you have heard the word spoken, Bigfoot?
Bigfoot.
Or how about, let's go even more. Bigfoot did it.
Nah, in court. In
That's not
court.
happening. That's
No,
not
in
court.
Happening. I'll tell you. I jokingly say this, but maybe only halfway. If I'm ever stopped and I might have a problem, I'm gonna look at the cop and be like, "I'm dude," and the cop's gonna be like, "What?" I'm gonna be like, "I'm dude," and he's gonna be like, "You're dude," and I'll be like, "I'm dude." He's gonna be like, "Then you should go on, man." Because
these are not the droids you're looking at.
That's right, because the police have a compelling incentive to never ever arrest dude, because if they ever arrest dude, they will have nothing left to do, because as we all know, when you were a criminal defense lawyer, I didn't do it, dude did it.
Got it. Okay, all right.
And if dude didn't do it, or even if dude did do it, you know who else was involved? Other dude.
Got it.
So dude and other dude, man, the police are never going to arrest them. They
All
can't.
right.
That's employment security right
All
there.
right. All right. So how many episodes are you still doing the podcast?
I plan to. I did a lot of that during COVID when we were locked down, and I had the time to do it, and I want to do it some more. I just need to like make the time and do it, because the reason that I started doing it was because I started looking around. I turned 55 in a couple of weeks, and a lot of the really good lawyers that I knew when I was coming up, man, they're dead. And I wish that I had had the foresight to think, man, one day these stories are going to be lost.
Yep.
And I have the opportunity to create an oral history, because I'm now in a position where I can call dozens of judges and lawyers that have been around a long time and have great stories to tell, or pieces of puzzles that are, that only they know. And I can call them and they will say yes. And they will sit down with me for an hour. Because one thing about lawyers is, if I call them and I say, I want you to talk about yourself, well, they're in, right? Right. Like, duh.
All right.
Yeah, so, like, I've done some pretty cool people, like David Raven and Abby Rubenfeld, and some people that have done some pretty impressive shit. And I wish that I had, like, General Leach. I wish I had done an interview with General Leach. I could have recorded 20 hours. I just wish that, like, I had the foresight to realize that the time I was spending drinking, gin with General Leach could not be replaced and could not be replicated. That was a walking encyclopedia of Tennessee knowledge, Tennessee politics and legal stuff. And he did some amazing things, and I had the opportunity and privilege to practice with him for 5 years. And he's gone, and we'll never get those stories. So, like, and it might, one day it might just be somebody's kid. Like, I wish I'd known my dad better. He died when I was young. General Leach's son was a fairly young kid when he died suddenly. Man, I wish I had like 20 hours of Leach to give that kid.
Yeah.
Like, it's a blessing for all of Jaeger's grandchildren and children, the hours of Jaeger that they have access
there's a
to.
diary there for
Yeah.
sure.
So,
And I mean, and so much time. I mean, he literally spent all those years with them all the time.
yeah. And so, that's a blessing for them. And then aside from just like the historical, like the oral history of the legal profession, there's some pretty cool stories. Like, I did one with a guy that had a case here in Benton County against TWRA, because the guy,
The camera guy?
yeah, the
Okay.
lawyer that was suing TWRA to stop them from being able to.
So you and I have a mutual friend whose property that actually happened to.
Yes, correct. So I called that lawyer, and he was happy to talk about it. And as I understand,
I listened to that episode.
I understand it, they won. and I have to follow up with him. But like, there's a few of these that I've done that I'd like to follow up and be like, okay, so what happened next?
So how many episodes have you done?
I've done 20. I haven't done one in probably over a year, and I already know who I would want my next guest to be, and I think he'll say yes. He just retired from being a judge. I'm pretty sure he would say yes, and he's a genuine. I mean, he's been a lawyer and judge for decades in Franklin and Nashville, and he's pushing 80 or so. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's if I'm going to do it, I need to probably do it. And I've been lucky in that I've been in one place for a long time, and I know a lot of people. And I haven't had anyone tell me no. So it's really just a question of like asking them and setting up a time and
Right.
doing it.
Right. So somebody asked we have a members group where people write in private questions and we answer them, and it's for the members only. And somebody asked me the other day, if you could go back into any time in history and meet somebody from history, who would you want? And I didn't have an answer for it.
Oh man.
Who would yours be?
I think it would have been amazing to have been along for the ride with Alexander.
Okay.
That guy, he becomes a king when his father is murdered. He's like 18. His father is murdered by challengers to the throne. He inherits an unruly kingdom that the Greeks consider. He's called Alexander the Great. People think he's Greek. He's Macedonian, and in that time, the Greeks thought the Macedonians were like these backwards, lowlings. So he inherits this kingdom in turmoil. His father's assassinated. He gets the kingdom, and he has to prove himself to all of his father's old enemies, rivals, and loyal, lower guys. And he does that rather quickly. And then for the next 14 years, he goes on an endless campaign of conquest, rewrites the entire map, conquers lands that no one even knew existed, and becomes Alexander the Great. Literally took an army over the Hindu Kush. And after 12 or 14 years of following him everywhere he wanted to go, including North Africa and every bit of the map that they knew about, they cross over the Hindu Kush, and some of his guys are finally like, holy shit, there's more? Man, I haven't even seen my wife in 10 years, man. Can we for a little bit? And he's dead by the time he's 32, and he's Alexander the Great. But he lived till he was only 32.
Right.
I mean, so I would say I would love to ride along with him. Washington, to be in Washington's camp through the hardship and through all that would be amazing. I wish, and I guess it's cliche or maybe overdone, but I wish that if I could go back and just be there to see it happening, man, Old Testament, it would be interesting, just to see the events that are recorded in, for example, the Old Testament, and see whether they hold up to, because there's a lot of people that are oh well, this thing that's described in the Old Testament is one of the things that God did to Pharaoh to convince Pharaoh to let his,
and so much of it was retranslated through when the
I
language
mean,
has changed.
but there's so many of these things that are okay, well, one of them was locusts. Well,
right,
that could have happened.
We've seen it,
right?
cameras.
So did it get exaggerated and embellished and translated and built up into a big narrative? Or did some shit like that happen?
Right.
And it would be
Is it like social media, a telephone?
Right.
The first guy, but the third time it's repeated, there's still some fact. The fifth time, there's no fact.
Because I've actually spent the last 6 months reading the Bible. I've never done that.
What prompted that?
Couple things. One, I read a lot, voraciously.
Yes.
Hundreds of
I don't
pages.
have to read books because Dana tells me about it.
Hundreds of pages a week and I don't read I don't want to be disparaging, but I don't read garbage. Like, I read literature, I read history, I read philosophy. And I got to the point where I was like, I've read some amazing books. If you're going to read as much as I read, eventually you should read the Bible. Whether you believe it or not, whether you claim a faith or not. And as you read the Bible, man, if you like Game of Thrones, you would fucking love the Old Testament. Like, it's like, and so if somebody wrote the Bible now, like if R.R. Martin or whatever, George R.R. Martin had written the Bible, it would be a bestseller. Because the stories are so exquisitely perfect. Whether you believe the faith part of it or not, the stories as a like universal set of archetypal stories that explain and help us understand and deal with the condition of being human are amazing. Amazing.
We got to cut this one short.
Okay, why?
You're being called, and it is the time.
Okay, last question. I'm gonna give you a name, and you tell me what comes to mind, and that name is Pierre.
Man, I love my boy Pierre. That guy, no one that knows Pierre can be surprised that he has gone on to become. He's gone from a master mechanic to salesman. He's potentially going to be salesman of the year in his first year at Porsche.
I told him
and he's found the thing that he's so good at, and I'm so happy for him. Like if what we do around here is see people, and I think we do. I think part of what happens in Camden is guys show up here, gals too, but let's say guys show up here, and men like you and me and James and others see them and go, man, you're doing okay, but you know what you could be? You could. And to see Pierre go from a guy that showed up here and was like, this is awesome, I love it here, to like, man, you could be this, and this, and then watch him execute the whole thing and be that now, love it for him.
Yeah, I just love Pierre. Pierre makes me want to be a better person. Like, I want to do shit that Pierre is proud of.
Yeah.
And never in my life have I ever been next to Pierre where I didn't think Pierre had my best interest.
100%.
No matter what
100%.
it was.
Like there's no guile or scheming on his part.
Never. No.
I mean, now don't get me wrong. Like he knew I'd gotten a watch for like a third of what it was worth, and he offered me $500 more than I had in it, and then was kind of halfway bent that I wouldn't sell it to him for merely $500 more than I'd gotten in it, when it was worth 3 times what he was offering.
It's Sonny guts, bro. Sonny guts.
Yeah. I met his dad. And his dad, if you meet Pierre's dad, you'll totally fucking understand the whole thing. So his dad was like, "You would have made $500." I was like, "Never mind."
Was he wearing a gold chain?
I don't think so.
I picture Pierre's family as like Zohan.
No, not like that. I've met his mom and his dad, and if you meet both of them, you'll totally fucking understand.
Got it. I love you, Pierre.
All right,
Dude, thanks for sitting down, man.
Yeah, man, my pleasure.
Yeah, man, I'm talking about realest, one of the realest.